Hello, everyone. This is Water Fiction here, and today I wanted to do this quick little thing here. Something that I was kind of thinking about, because I do. Okay, I don't really read too much comics. I try to read comics, like online comics, web comics, or some sites that you like to read old school comics. At your leisure is kind of nice. But I was thinking about how so many people talk um about comic books, and one thing they bring up is the modern age of comics. Like you have the golden age, the silver age, the bronze age, and you have like the modern age of comics. And now, I'm not a big fan of the modern age of comics. You would think, well, why? Why wouldn't you like the term modern age of comics? Because every age is the modern age. Like, do you think when the person's making Superman, he goes, yes, yes, this is the golden age of comics, and then as soon as the Flash with the scientific thing comes in, we go, no, wait, now it's the Silver Age comics, and then all of a sudden Peter Parker lets Gwen Stacy die, and then it's like, nope, Bronze Age now. It's on the Bronze Age. They're not gonna do that, right? Like you don't do it. You have to actively give them those names, right? And well, each age technically for right now would be the modern age, right? But then there needs to be distinct ages for each major groupings of medias. So how would we do the ages of comic books? I'm glad you asked. Yay! Okay, that's cute. Now let's see, go this one. First, you have what I think should be called the Diamond Age. This is the age of political cartoons. See, back in the day, cartoons didn't have like fictional characters. A lot of times they had like real life historical figures, but what they did was that, especially political figures, they would kind of show them if they agreed with the person in a positive light, they disagreed with the person in like a negative light. You even see it today, right? You see a lot of comics either portraying the person as being strong or weak, smart or not so smart, or dumb, I guess. Highly skilled or clumsy, and they do that, say, hey, look, this is like how we view this person, in this kind of over exaggeration of the character and the ideals, right? Then of course you have the Platinum Age, which is this is a very common term for ages before the Golden Age of comics. They're usually funny character cartoons. Like, usually the characters are more. Sure, they might have stuff um, like Zorro or Popeye the Sailor Man. Popeye the Sailor Man just does kind of get into funny character categories, But you have more characters that. Sure, they might be serious sometimes, like Tarzan in the Jungle in the comic book form or whatever, or Sheena, or the Queen of the Jungle, or Buck Rogers and not Fred Astaire. Uh, Flash Gordon, But for the most part, you had stuff like funny animal characters, little kid characters like Little Lulu, Minnie Mouse, Pluto, Daffy Duck, Donald Duck, like that, those kind of characters, It was more played for lighthearted and for laughs, Then you have the Golden Age of comics, where most of the characters had more of like a magical origin to them. Like, they had some kind of origin story that was like, it wasn't really, it was pseudoscientific at best, but most of the time it was mostly magical in origin. Like drinking water and gaining super speed in the Flash, or magical flame turning into the Green Lantern, or the biggest one, of course, the one that actually started the Golden Age and the whole trend of the superhero thing, being shot out as a baby in a rocket into space because your planet was dying, and you happen to land into a farm field raised by the most loving parents of all time, unless of course you're in the Man of Steel universe. And then you raised as a Kent, a Clark Kent, and you become Superman. You know, and yeah, that's like the golden age of comics. Basically, it's basically the place part where a lot of your superheroes came out during this time, right? Some failed to get recognition. Some became really successful. Some of them became so successful that the company that owned Superman at the time was like, hey, look, your character is a Superman knockoff. You gotta knock it off. And then they get faded in obscurity, but then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, let's buy this character. Now Captain Marvel, the one that says Shazam, and not the alien one, who will be on later on, is now a DC Comics superhero. Win, woohoo! I don't know. Then of course you have the Silver Age. Well, now the origins more scientific in feature, you know? Like you had, like the very first iteration of it was Barry Allen's version of the Flash, where instead of drinking water and then getting super speed of it, lightning bolt strikes some chemicals, which then strikes him, and he wakes up with superhuman speed. The Green Lantern, basically Hal Jordan, he sees a spaceship crash land. This alien goes, "The wing, it chose you," and he becomes the Green Lantern from the Green Lantern Corps. And it goes the biggest one, the best known. When it goes, you have like Peter Parker Spider-Man, you know, when he gets bit by the spider, which originally was part of Amazing Fantasy. It was supposed to be one-off because so popular you guys own series. Because Stan Lee knew what he was doing when he created Spider-Man. Well, he wrote Spider-Man, I should say, as the question then becomes who actually owns the character. Is it the person who writes the story or the person who draws the character, you know? Like, you can kind of say like a 50-50 yet, but I'm not going to go into that whole world thing. Like, that's way too much, you know? I'm not going to focus on it right now, but something to ponder, though, you know? Then you go to the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age has more diverse characters, you know? Like, back in the day, like, during the Silver Age of comics, you know, you had, like, a team called the X-Men, which I found was kind of interesting in two ways, in two lights. First off, they're supposed to be representative of, basically, originally of, like, black people living in a heavily segregated or desegregating areas, you know, with the tension that was rising, you know, because people still didn't like that idea. And then later on, they're supposed to be representative in the movies, kind of hints of, like, especially the ones like X-Men, X2, X-Men United, and X3: The Last Stand. There's like supposed to hinting at being gay, right? Like with like the Bobby's mom as Iceman, you know, his mom as have you tried not being a mutant? Like they have a choice in the matter, you know, and they don't. It's genetics, you know. Genetics and like early environmental factors that would later on segment itself in as like a core memory kind of thing, you know. But if you look at the characters, though, they're white, you know, like the original cast of X-Men, say for like make Beast, who becomes a blue furry dude, he's white. He's a white dude, you know, and it's like. So it's kind of like funny. It's like, we represent the minority communities. And we're not even Irish or Italian. Oh, man. Like they're basically, like, majority white, you know? And it was kind of like a funny kind of thing when you look at it, like, wait a second. Another thing, too, I thought was kind of interesting, not with the thing, but I have to say it though, is the fact that it's like people fear and hate them because they're different, because they're mutants. But it's like, why? It's like, oh my god, do you see that guy? He flew up in the sky with wings. I hate him because, ooh, how dare he have wings? My thing would be, oh my god, how do I not have wings? Why does he get to fly? Why does this guy get to shapeshift for? Why does this really cool, awesome dude get to throw playing cards that explode? I'm a normal average Joe and they get all this shit. What the fuck? What the hell? Yeah. But anyway, so during the Bronze Age of comic books, you had more diverse characters. You had Logan, who came from Canada, right? And then you have Colossus, who came from Russia. You had Storm, who, if I remember, I think she was an orphan girl. In was it described as Kenya? I can't remember, but Storm was like very prominent. She was a little. She was one of the earlier black female superheroes. We had Black Panther, who was basically the very first non-caricatured black superhero character, and I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who is the best friend of, or the right-hand man of J. Jonah Jameson. Never in the movies, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, when J. Jonah's like, he's a criminal, he's a menace, and the guy goes, he's a hero, you know, standing up with Spider-Man, you know, and he even looks out for Peter Parker because he sees the good in both of them, you know. That guy was the first non-caricatured black supporting character. Back in the day, you saw a character who was of color, you would see a lot of things that we would nowadays be like, you're kind of leaning towards the racist side of things. Let's kind of tone it down to bring it back a little bit. And so, like, it all happened in the Bronze Age, right? You had Luke Cage, the Power Man. You had, what was his name? Shang-Chi, I think his name is. He has all these characters that were basically of different ethnicities, other than just being majority white. You know, even the Banshee, Irish, you know, and stuff like that. You know, and it was showing like a great times with it, you know. And then you go into the Iron Age of comics. And it deals more with darker themes. Darker in the fact that you had like the death of Superman. You had Batman death in the family, you know. Things that could actually happen more like darker and grittier, because people started to want to see that more instead of being light-hearted. They're like, you know what? Let's get like darker and grittier. Which darker and grittier does not always mean better, you know. Like if you can pull it off, you can pull it off. But if not, maybe not, you know. Now this is the point. Where the modern age of comics comes in, but I actually don't have it that way. I have it like this. I have the Copper Age, right? This, I would say, is the point in time when the 7 writers, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, I can't remember the other ones right now, but these 7 writers left Marvel and DC and formulated their own company called Image Comics, and they helped bring about the independent developers into their own set of creator-owned characters they were working on. Even if they created a character underneath the banner, they didn't have any rights to those characters. They didn't have any say so of whether or not they get recognition or not. The company said that we own the characters, not you, and they're like, no, we don't want to be corporate owned. We want to be creator owned. And so they developed their own stories. You know, and of course, they also had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was also created around this time. You know, and Static Shock before he was bought out by DC Comics was basically independent owned character, right? It all falls under the Copper Age of comics. Basically, it's the age when the independent developers get to have a say-so. Now, I think what we are currently in is what I call the Mercury Age. These are your progressive characters. Diverse, now the Bronze Age with the diverse characters was one thing, but there was no like real strong like progressive like show the kind of hey, now I'm gonna show that yes we have a black character being a superhero or a Chinese character being a superhero or any Asian character being a superhero, any Italian any Eastern European character being a superhero, any like a Russian character like or even like a South Asian or East Asian specifically, you know, or I don't think I said that. Okay, but you know the 11, but it wasn't really fully like they didn't really fully progressive until to the Mercury Age when you have progressive characters come into light. They're saying, hey, look, man, we're going to become more and more progressive now. Interesting enough, Superman has always been progressive. He's always stood for the ideals of the people. You know, it might not have really shown too much, but he's always been progressive. So, if you see the Superman movie, it's good, it's excellent, and it shows Superman as he should be, not as Man of Steel thinks he should be. You know? You know, like, Superman is a symbol of hope, not a symbol of I can smash buildings or whatever. And snap Zod's neck, even though technically he could have found another way of handling the situation. He could have easily knocked him out or something. You know? But anyway, so we are currently in the Mercury Age. We might technically currently be in the Mercury Age of comics. I do have my own way of like looking at it near the end. Kind of sort of like how I would look at it. Now, you might not agree with this one, so when I get to it, you'll see what I mean. And maybe you say, hey, maybe if I should make it official or should I do it based on the idea? I'll show you in a second, in a little bit. Sorry. Oh, sorry. The Diamond Age of comics goes from 1842 to 1897. That is basically Diamond Age of comics when they had more political cartoons than the first ever, like, kind of like jokey little cartoon, you know. When it wasn't based on political figures, based upon like some funny animal character, little kid character, or whatever. It was like not a real person, you know. That leads into Platinum Age of comics from 1897 to 1938. And that lasts until Superman came into being, and that at least goes to the Golden Age of comics from 1938 to 1956. Where when the Flash first comes into being, the Barry Allen, the scientific version of Flash comes into being, then you get the Silver Age of comics, 1956 to 1970. Sometime in 1970, Peter Parker, as Spider-Man, when fighting the Green Goblin, tries to catch Gwen Stacy, but then he doesn't count on the webbing catching her correctly. In fact, well, he counts on hopes that it does, but he doesn't count on her being caught so quickly that her neck snaps and it kills her, and he goes, I let Gwen Stacy die. This leads to the Bronze Age from 1970 to 1985. And then, of course, I think it was either The Death of Superman or Death in the Family in 1986 leads into the Iron Age until 1991. Then in 1991, when the 7 developers leave Marvel and DC Comics to form Image Comics, it forms up until 2011 the Copper Age of comics. And then, of course, from 2011 to, I say 2020, because this is when my ideas for this whole thing came about. It's been a while. I was trying to formulate them, but I might change it to just being 2011 to nothing, you know, or put question marks maybe. This is the Mercury Age of comics, which, if you want to argue that we're still in the Mercury Age, I can kind of see that, you know, because I didn't make my works official yet, you know, and I got to make it official. So yeah, I don't know. Really, I based on like when I got my ideas for doing this stuff, and there are a lot of them, but I only show one of them right now. I might talk about the other ones, but for right now, it's based on my, like when I got my ideas for the thing came out, about. But I might change that thing up though. Okay. Okay. Now, I looked at the most iconic characters with the letter S in the names. Diamond Age, Ulysses S. Grant. Yeah. Platinum Age, Popeye the Sailor Man. The Golden Age is Superman. Silver Age, Spider-Man. The Peter Parker version, of course. Obviously, of course. The Bronze Age, Storm. The Iron Age, Supergirl. I would have actually put down the Smurflings, because they also were at the same year Supergirl came out. They came out, but I figured they're not really like superheroes though, but it's so fucking awesome, so cool, because as a kid, I always liked them, And I still can't believe that they don't bring up, and then these Smurfs were like, oh, we're gonna make Smurfette be the one with cool, snappy comeback quotes. That's not Smurfette. That's Sassette. Get your characters right. It's like, come on. Bring the Smurflings in. Bring Wild Smurf in. Bring Baby Smurf in. Bring those guys in, for the site, nothing here and there. I just had a tangent on that thing, The Copper Age has, of course, Spawn. And now the Mercury Age has Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And then, of course, I looked at all the ones that are more like animal-themed heroes, right? Diamond Age, Theodore Roosevelt. Like, wait, how is Theodore Roosevelt an animal-themed hero? He refused to kill a bear cub because it was tied up and it was weakened by men who thought that that's what he wanted. He was like, no, I don't want this. Like, if I want to go hunting, I want to go hunting on my own terms, I don't want to do it this way, So he had more character than his own men he was going hunting was, and that of course led to the teddy bear. So boom, he has to be up there, Platinum Age, Pluto. That's right. Mickey's dog makes the cut, makes the list. Cause I figured a lot of cartoons too. It was Pluto. I guess he was doing Louis, but I think they cause more mischief than actually are heroic. So, and plus, I think I'm seeing more Mickey Mouse and Pluto cartoons than I do see of Donald Duck and Huey and his nephew's cartoon. Huey doing Louie cartoons, The Golden Age is Batman, which is funny that the coloration, it's actually kind of ironic because in the original iterations of Batman, he actually wore all black or all gray, like a dark gray kind of color. Actually, on his bat symbol was yellow. Because the idea was that was the only place he was bulletproof, so the bad guys would shoot at his bat symbol and think that he was invincible. Which can only work if you fight at night, right? If we're in the dark areas. Because can you imagine if broad day? Oh no, he's bulletproof. Quick, aim for the head. Or aim for the arms and legs, It wouldn't work, because it just wouldn't make any sense. Like, would a bad guy or a villain be like, I wonder if all of everywhere is invincible. Or if it's just that part that's bulletproof, Once again, the Silver Age is Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, because, he's the most iconic character from the age. The Bronze Age, I would say, is Wolverine. I believe he should be from Michigan. And that's because of the fact that, I guess people in Michigan are called Wolverines. And it's, oddly enough, just like with where I live in Wisconsin, like we're called the Badger State. And people from Wisconsin were called Badgers, not because of the animal, per se, but because of the miners that would basically be forced to live underground because they get snowed in while working in wintry conditions because they had to work, and they were trapped in the mines until the spring came, and they were known as badgers. Well, Wolverine was kind of basically animals more based upon the ferocity that they had in combat and battle, and Wolverine is known for ferocity in combat. So him being Canadian kind of works, but I think he should have been from Michigan, because then they'd be like, it's the Wolverine. Bring in the Michigan Wolverines. Ah! I don't know, I'm trying to do the football thing, you know. Um, for the Iron Age, I have Venom. That's because of his spider powers. Wait, he doesn't have spider powers. Actually, he kind of does. The original iteration of Venom was that Peter Parker, of course, gets his black Peter Parker. During the Secret Wars event, his mask is taken off. He has a paper bag, and this I can't know what one it was it Mr. Fantastic or was it Tony Stark? One of those two I know. Gives him a black suit, the black Spider-Man suit, which became iconic. A lot of people didn't really care for it. They wanted the original color suit back. Like, we don't like this black suit. We want the red and blue suit, red and white blue suit back, you know? And Todd McFarlane decided to say, like, what if the suit was an alien symbiote that was controlling Peter Parker, you know, Spider-Man, making people more violent and aggressive. He then, basically, in a church scene, with the church bells, finds that the suit doesn't like that. He fights it off, and he rejects it. The suit then sees Eddie Brock, who blames Spider-Man for because he basically, he tried to do something like, without, he was like, Eddie Brock was another newspaper reporter who didn't do his job correctly. He gets called out from it by Spider-Man, who catches the real criminal. And Eddie Brock loses his job. He can't pay his rent, so he loses his home. His girlfriend leaves him. He then gets sick, and he begs for the forgiveness of his thoughts. He's like, "Look, I can't help it. I mean, his thoughts. I really hate the Spider-Man guy. I really hate him, you know." And the symbiote, knowing who Spider-Man is, Peter Parker, hates Peter Parker because Peter Parker rejected him, and they merge together to create Venom. And the symbiote, having learned the powers of Spider-Man's spider powers from Peter Parker's Spider-Man, gave the powers to Venom, but in a much more greater degree, and can even stop Spider-Man's spider sense from occurring. Because the symbiote knows how it works, you can turn it off, you know? And that's why I put him as an animal-themed superhero character, because he started as a villain, yes, but then he kind of slowly began his way into being anti-hero, maybe even going to be hero his own right, but he's still kind of, not really a good role model for like, young kids, you know, because he's violent and vicious, you know. Then, of course, in the Copper Age, we have Savage Dragon, who was another really big one. I think it was created by Eric Larson. That's the other guy that kind of left Marvel DC Comics, and he created Savage Dragon for Image Comics. And then, of course, the Mercury Age, we have Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Yeah, the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man. And then, of course, because I figured, you know what? I did all the superheroes with S in the name, and all the heroes with the animal themed. What were the female characters? You know, the strong, iconic woman of the comic books age. For the Diamond Age, I have Susan B. Anthony, and yes, if you have noticed, I should say, I base it on the date that they were born, just like with the characters they introduced, you know, when they're created. And that's how I base it on, so yeah. So Diamond Age, you have Susan B. Anthony, who broke the law by voting, because back in those days, women were not allowed to vote at all, you know, but then she broke the law by voting, and she insisted on being arrested. Just like any man, they broke the law, and they said, okay, we're going to arrest you. And this really stirred the fire in a lot of women's eyes. They say, hey, look, she's fighting for us. We got to fight for us, too. And that really showed like a great thing. So she is technically she's a hero. And she's a female hero, so she's a super heroine. For the Platinum Age, I have Minnie Mouse. I know Minnie Mouse could also work in the animal thing, but I put her in here, you know. Because why not, you know? Minnie Mouse, you know. For the Golden Age, we have Wonder Woman, who technically is one of the earliest known superheroines of the Golden Age. Maybe not of all the ages, because there are superheroines who kind of predated her, technically. Is the whole thing, you know. For Silver Age, we have the Invisible Lady from the Fantastic Four, which I do want to see the movie. I'm kind of nervous about it. I'm kind of like, I am hoping that it's good. You know, I was like, it might actually, if they, like, I'm hoping that it's gonna. I'm kind of like nervous because like, something that's like, you know. I hope it's a good one, you know. Sorry. Anyways, for the Bronze Age, I have Rogue. Now I know I could have Storm in there, but I figured I didn't want to do too much of the same, what we painting the same ones over and over again, you know. So I put down Rogue instead. Why? Because Rogue is like a most interesting character, right? Because she has a southern drawl, so she has that down south attitude and like and charm with her howdy y'all, you know, and like come here sugar, you know. And what I like, especially from the animated series, I have not seen her. I've seen her only animated series and the movies, but she's like what are you doing to a character, people? Come on, what are you doing, come on. I don't not know how she's in the comics, but like in the cartoon though, and which early on she would like, taunt, like kind of be playful and flirt with like all the people because she knew offhand that she couldn't touch anybody because she could kill them or she'd steal their powers and their memories or whatever way. And I like that about her because like she likes to basically she's playing hard to get because nobody could really get her, right? It's awesome, you know. In the Iron Age, once again I have Supergirl. Mainly because, you know, Smurflings wouldn't really work out on you know. For the Copper Age, I have the Witchblade. Created by Mark Silvestri. It's basically this young woman, Sarah Pazzini. She gets a hold of this gauntlet thing while investigating this series of crimes or something like that. I don't know what it is, how it goes. But basically, she has this gauntlet and she becomes this armored warrior known as the Witchblade. I actually first started seeing it in the TV series, The Witchblade. And it's fucking awesome. So cool. Yeah, you know. And then, of course, in the Mercury Age, we have Jessica Cruz. Another Green Lantern. The first time I saw her was actually in the animated series, where she's more like an environmentalist who cares about the environment and kind of thing. That's kind of cool, you know. And she basically has a little bit of a competition, or a little bit of rivalry, if you will, with Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan, who is basically this jockey kind of guy who's following us up, but is awesome and it is hilarious. One of the episodes is the one I'm talking about. You might know it when I say it. Oh, another one, yo. There's this the scene where the villain Zod shows up and he basically wants Superman, but they decide they're gonna fight him. But it's basically there's a bit bickering with the two teams, and Hal Jordan asked the leader of the other team, who the leader of his team, to go get him some donuts, because the leader of Jessica Cruz's team is basically so smitten over this guy that she can't think properly, that once the guy leaves, all of a sudden she comes back and then she goes with this plan, and they all like team up in like their own little way, and it's awesome, you know. So I just want to say that, you know. Anyways, I know it's not much for my thing because I'm going to talk about some of it, but I will tell you what I think the next age should be. What I call the next age. I do have it in a setup at the time, but I might change it because based it mostly on like when I got an idea. I think it was like early to late October they had the idea from in that time period. But if I don't have it down officially, then is it really official? You know. Maybe not, so I might change it again, just so you know. I call it the Tin, or the Retro Golden Age. I laid it down for 2020 when I came up with the idea, to like 2042, because I figured, I have to have an end date. But I might actually change it to being more close to now and say, like, whenever I put the question mark there for me. But the superhero character that this is like, I came with a lot of them, But the one I want to talk about that I have right now is called Snake Man. I looked up online, there's really no real snake-themed superheroes, really. Especially not ones named Snake Man. There's Batman, there's Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Bee-Man, Shark-Man. Yeah, look that one up. That's really fascinating. But no Snake Man as far as I know. Something. What's the Snake? What's that story about Snake Man about? Well, Snake Man is going to be about this guy named Tyler Panning, who is a used car salesman. He sells faulty used cars, but he can sell it like it's brand new. He can sell you a car that has no engine, no wheels, it's sitting on bricks, and the trunk is busted open. You can't close it at all, and he'd sell it to you like it's a brand new car, and you'd buy it. Like that's kind of like how good he is. He's a used car salesman, Well, he sells a crappy used car to Annabelle Retixulon, who goes usually the name of Annie Retix, or the Queen of Serpents, who when she's driving, the brakes don't work, but she needs the brakes to work because it's not because she's on those little kind of those cliff kind of road things, but kind of like here's a cliff, here's like the road kind of thing. I don't know why I'm saying here's this because you can't see my hands right now. But what I'm talking about, like they have the cliff and they have this little bit of road on the edge of the cliff, where a semi truck is coming and it's going to be fast. She has to put the brakes on, but the brakes don't work, and she crashes off the railing. And when the car crashes, even though she's fine, one of the cushions that one of the favorite snake is on, because she's the Queen of Serpents, so she allows to do snakes as pets, gets impaled and gets killed. She then goes back later that night to the used car house lot and demands compensation, demands some money back and a better car, And he goes, sorry, honey, but I don't do that. No. And he lets slip that he goes, look, I sold 1,000 people 1,000 cars. And they didn't come back to me for the refund. And she's like, okay then. Until you can help out 1,000 people, you will not have any arms and legs. All of a sudden he finds himself basically armless and legless as she initially disappears, but then I have like his niece, who's basically visiting for the time being. She finds out, and she learns quickly from the Queen of Serpents, Annie Retix, that basically he did to himself. He needs to help 1,000 people, so she decides to make him a costume, and he, by learning through the Queen of Serpents' serpents who teach him how to move and act like a snake, like a serpent, becomes Snake Man. Yeah, that's the whole gimmick of it, the whole spiel, He's basically is trained by Annie Retix and her snakes, and he's even helped out by his niece to help fight crime. And say that he's helping people as much as he can. Now, everything we're wondering, well, wait a second, Ryder, why is she helping for? Well, that's because I've seen those stories where the Romani character will kind of be portrayed as being like curse happy, and then be like, I will curse you, ha ha ha, and then run away. But there's no lesson to be learned. Like, wait, but it's like, what is the person? Is the person like not like the person being like a jerk, but the best lesson is to not be that much of a jerk, So we wouldn't want to help out. So instead, I have her basically show up and she kind of like helps out because she doesn't really want him to be stuck armless and legless for the rest of his lives. She wants him to learn like a lesson. So that's why she helps him to learn how to move like a snake, and even fight like a snake too. Yeah. I I don't know. But he's not the only one that I have. I have a character who basically asks herself, what if you became a hero later in life instead of like early on? Instead of being like a young adult or being a young kid, what if you didn't pick up the man to be a hero until you were much later past your prime? I have a story that has a character who does gain the superpowers and abilities, but they're not really taking not that they're not taking it seriously. But other people, it's more like when they see him, when they say, let's say they're in a bank robbery situation and they're like being held at gunpoint, and he comes up and goes, "Oh, I'm here to save the day," and like, oh, you know what? We'll wait till the next team of heroes comes in. Don't worry, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Man, you know what? We would have called in, so you don't need to be here. That's okay. Next time. We'll let you see us next time. We promise. Or like, when people save us, we're allergic to that, And the robber guy's like, yeah, don't you want them to be healthy? How selfish can you be? And it's like you're selfish as that. Like how the hero basically, the character wants to be a hero, but like the power this character the hero has makes him be more like, maybe not. Then another one that I have for the hero stuff, is this young character who's really shy and introverted, and gets his powers and abilities, but doesn't feel like they're the right powers and abilities for him. It's like doesn't seem like the correct ones that I should have. Or it doesn't feel like he's superhero material. But he's destined for greatness and to be a hero. So I have stuff like that. I also have my own genres I'm working on. Try to create my own genre so I can say, hey, look at this genre is like Hall of Fame or whatever. Anyways, that's my little tidbit thing on there. I hope you like what I had to say. I know it's not the script thing, but I will come back to it tomorrow. I might do a little bit of interspersing of like other things as well. Kind of quick little ones like this or whatever. How long this is, I don't know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my Patreon. It will really help me out a lot. And thank you and goodbye.